Hello photographers, my name is Spyros Heniadis and this is where I answer your photography questions and we learn about photography together. Now I get lots and lots of questions about composition, and so I've wanted for a while to do a series of videos on composition, and this is the first in that series and I'm pretty excited about this. So we're going to jump right into it, and composition is the arrangement of the visual elements in your photograph. And we use composition to make photos that are compelling and visually interesting to look at. And to do that with deliberation, we need to really understand two different things. The first thing is how to arrange things in the photo. And the second thing is what those visual elements are and how we can use those visual elements. So in this video, we're going to talk about the arrangement of things in the photo because that's really important. It's one of the easy things to get started with. And the arrangement of things in your photo is important because of how we look at and process images, how our brain actually works. Because when you look at an image, you might think that you're processing the image as a whole. You see the image and take the whole thing in. For example, when you look at this image right here, you pretty much instantly recognize this as some kind of industrial complex on the water. But while a part of your brain is telling you that this is an industrial complex on the shore of a body of water with some railroad tracks, another part of your brain is seeking out and establishing a visual path through the image. So take a moment and just look at this photo, and you should notice that your eyes are moving around the photo and they're moving in a pretty consistent pattern. This path that your eyes follow is established through the arrangement of the visual elements in your photograph. So when I look at this image, I come in on the railroad tracks, and the tracks move me from the front of the image all the way to the back of the image. And when I get to the background of the photo, my eyes find the buildings and they wander through the buildings until I encounter the steam. And then my eyes follow the steam up and into the sky all the way up to the edge of the photo frame. Now from there, my eyes follow the steam along the edge, moving down and back into the buildings and then over to what looks like a giant swing set on the far right. And that swing set actually exits the frame on the right, but then the rippling water brings me back into the composition and leads me back to the railroad tracks, which starts a loop all over again. Now that's my path through the image, but I'm willing to bet that you followed the exact same path before I even outlined it. And that's because our brains are pretty predictable at this level. And this is a good thing because it allows us to control how a viewer is going to view our photos. Now, there are a lot of different compositional rules and tips out there in the world. And two of the most often repeated rules are don't center your subject and use the rule of thirds. Now, I'm calling bullshit on both of those rules because it's just not that simple. And if you've watched any of my Critique of the Week videos, you've heard me talk about not centering your subject, and I've probably mentioned the rule of thirds in those videos too. But here's the deal. The path that your eyes follow through the frame is based on the movements of your eyes. There's actual physical movement going on there. And the rule of thirds and the idea of not centering your subject are both tools designed to help keep the eye moving throughout the photo. Now, as human beings, we have this tendency to center the subject right smack in the middle of the photograph. And we do this because we figure that that subject is the most important thing in the photo, and we want to make sure that people that see our photo see the subject. And when we do this, it's sort of a way of putting giant red arrows all throughout the image pointing right at the center that say, look right here, look and see what I found. But when we center a subject like that, we have a tendency to create an image that has no visual path through it. And if there's no path through the image, then the brain gets bored and you get bored of the photo and you don't want to look at it anymore because it's not engaging. So the problem with the rule of thirds and don't center your subject is that they don't adequately explain why you shouldn't center your subject or why you should use the rule of thirds. And the truth is, it's actually perfectly fine to center your subject as long as there is a compelling visual path throughout your image. And here's an example. In this shot right here, the body of the fork is roughly centered in the photo, but the shape of the fork moves you through the center of the photo. And then the fork tines create a zigzag path that moves you up and down, in and out of the center of the image. So this creates a photo that is compelling to look at even though the subject is basically in the center of the photo. And here's another example. In this shot right here, we've got the squirrel's body smack in the center of the frame. But again, the arrangement of the photo moves you through the image. It starts on the eyes of the squirrel, and you move through the body, through the center, up and down the legs, and then up the tail, out the edge of the frame, and then you come back in on the leaves and the grass, which lets you meander back onto the squirrel. So even though I've got subjects that have been centered, I've got visual pathways that move the viewer through the image, making the photo engaging. So it's okay to center your subject as long as you maintain a path through the image. And the rule of thirds is like the flip side of the don't center your subject coin. Because when you say don't center your subject, the implication is that you're going to use the rule of thirds. And when you say we're going to use the rule of thirds, the implication is that we're not going to center the subject. So what the rule of thirds says is that you should divide your photo frame into thirds like this. And what you're supposed to do is place the major subjects on the lines or at the intersections of the lines. And this is designed to create visual pathways through the image. It's designed to keep your eye moving. And this is achieved through balance and space. Because when you place your subject on one of those third lines or at one of those intersections, what you do is you unbalance the space in the photo. Now here's an example. This circle is right in the center of the image. And this is a static image because the space around the circle is perfectly equal. And this perfect balance of space removes the need for the eye to travel anywhere throughout the photo because it knows that no matter where it goes, it's going to find exactly what it expects because everything in this is equal. But when we move the sphere to the lower left where these lines intersect, the space becomes unbalanced and our brain isn't sure what might be in the other space in the image. So it moves through the image hoping to find something in that unbalanced space, making this a more compelling image because the eye moves into the space and then back to the sphere and then back into the space again, creating a visual path through the image. So it's not as simple as just saying don't center your subject or use the rule of thirds. It's more important to understand what's underneath those rules, and that's the creation of a visual path in your image. Now there's a lot that I haven't said about space and composition. We're going to get to that in a later video. What I really wanted to stress in this video is the importance of creating the visual path. And getting started deliberately creating visual paths in your photographs is not that difficult. It's actually quite easy. All you need to do is pause before you're about to take a photo. When you're looking through that viewfinder or at the back of the screen if you're using a camera that doesn't have a viewfinder, look at the image, look at the composition that you have created and let your eyes wander through it and look for the visual path. And if you find a path that keeps your eye moving through the photo in some sort of a loop or circuit, you've got a good composition with a strong visual path. And if you find that you keep looking out of the edge of the frame and you're looking for something that isn't there, you need to adjust your composition. You need to move the camera so that you can find a path that keeps you in the image. Alright guys, that's all I've got for you this week. I hope you enjoyed this first video in the series on composition, and if you have any questions about creating visual paths in your image or composition in general, leave them down in the comments below. And do me a favor, while you're down there, let me know, do you have a tendency to center your subject, or have you been using the rule of thirds and other compositional rules? Now, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and if you really like this video, do me a huge favor, why don't you, and share it with your friends. But you know what? No matter what you do, you better get out there, take some damn photos, put some visual pathways in those photos, and I will see you next week. How's this for some visual pathways?